Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tell Net Show. As always, we're your hosts. We have the fabulous Kirsha Fox, author of Son of Deception and The White Leaf Child. She is a homeschooling mom of four, avid reader, and gamer.
And my co-host is Julia J.K. Allen, editor, author, and author coach. She's a fantasy and horror author who loves to sprinkle magic on everything. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, and we're very excited to welcome a fellow Michigander to the show tonight. Why don't you tell us all about Samantha Moran?
Yes, Samantha Moran. We're really excited about this one. She is fascinated by all manner of things that go bump in the night and strives to create relatable characters who face realistic problems in fictional settings. She's a firm believer in the idea that happily ever after is overrated and prefers her stories be full of twists and mysteries. Samantha lives with multiple sclerosis, which sometimes severely impacts her ability to use her hands. But in her free time, she loves to play tarot, Dungeons and Dragons, read books, write, and spend time with her family and pets. Welcome, Samantha.
Hello,
Hi.
welcome. Yes. Oh my gosh. Reading your bio, and I'm just like, horror writer from Michigan. Hello, new bestie. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. Sorry, my voice isn't all the way here because Michigan is an allergy season.
It is, unfortunately. Today was beautiful, but it does mean the allergies are acting up. Tell us a little bit about your writing journey, though. What does it look like for you, and how has it gone?
Well, I've been writing since I was in middle school. I joined a live poets society at my local library, and I sort of got overwhelmed by the responsibilities of being an adult, and I stopped writing for a really long time. About 6 years ago, I got it in my head that I was going to write my first full-length novel, and it took me 6 years because I kept getting in my own head, so I kept shutting it down. But in the last year and a half, I've released 5 books. I like to write shorter pieces for people like me who can't always sit and read, 400 or 500 page books at a time. And yeah, I'm just sort of exploring the craft and trying to build a community and showing my kids that they can follow their dreams. So it's been really good time so far.
Yes, congratulations on 5 books. That's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking about this today. Someone was talking about they were really struggling with like how to write a story, and I was just thinking like our doubt gets in our way so much when we go to write, and we can kind of talk ourselves out of what we're doing. A lot of it has to be that kind of a little bit of a fake it till you make it process when it comes to writing, because that imposter syndrome can be brutal.
Yes, you have to allow yourself to write so many terrible manuscripts before you, like, as you hone your craft and get to know your style and even the genres that you love.
Absolutely. I mean, look at who you were at 18 and who you are today. You weren't done yet. You were a first draft. Your books are allowed to be that way too.
Yes, exactly. I love that. That's like the perfect analogy. Like the hot mess we were, that was our rough draft. I'm gonna steal that. I love that so much.
I feel like we start as one hot mess and we become another one, and somewhere along the way it's normal, then we change again. Like
no, I love that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the genre you write and why you chose that?
So I write across multiple genres. I get bored easily. I found out in the last couple of years that I have ADD, and I think that kind of influences it. But I write in horror, thriller, and fantasy, and I've only recently started kind of veering into a little bit of spice within the horror genre itself.
Okay.
All of my books are going to have some sort of supernatural component, whether that be from witches, demons, hellhounds, all the way to ghosts and Norse deities. But I like the spooky things, so you're never going to find a story with a perfectly happy ending from me, and the genres that I write in really lean into that. Plus, I grew up with supernatural things being a huge emphasis in my life. My mom and dad were Stephen King and Anne Rice fans. So I ended up being the spooky girl.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's a good place to be. No, I devoured Stephen King and Goosebumps books all through middle school. So I think that's where my love for horror comes from for sure. Yeah, no, I love that.
Can you tell us a little bit about your writing process, how you go from like idea to finished manuscript? I imagine that's kind of a twisty, turny, loopy kind of thing.
Yeah, so it starts with, an idea of either who the characters are, what their main problem is, and then there's panicking along the way.
Right.
Like,
Right.
oh no, can I really do this justice? My ideal way is that I start the book at the beginning right to the end. My life has recently become a lot more chaotic with 2 young kids, so I've started scene hopping now, and it's actually working out pretty well. But I'm not a plotter. I'm definitely what I call a plancer. I have sort of a plan, and then I watch it go off the rails.
Right.
The characters are just going, I don't think so. Let's try this other thing instead.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it just depends on the story too, whether the characters are the reason for the story or the plot is the reason the story. It changes every time.
Yeah.
The only thing that's consistent with me is I try not to put too much pressure on myself, because when you put the pressure on yourself to output vast amounts of words, then that becomes a stressor and it makes me back away. And I can only write in silence and in the dark. So I sit in my
Oh,
room with a candle because I think it's one of those hyper focus things. Um,
right.
so I turn off all the lights, I light a candle, I get a snack and a Monster Energy drink, and I go to work.
Yeah, no, snacks and drinks are kind of crucial to the process, I feel like.
Yes.
Because it's so easy to be like, oh, I'm distracted because I want a snack or I want a drink, and then you get up and you're out writing and all of that stuff. So I always have like something that's not too messy, but something to snack on, something to drink, multiple drinks usually,
Yes.
because we're also the ADHD club, so we have at least 3 drinks at all
I
times.
can't write right now. I don't have a snack and 2 drinks. Like,
Yeah,
I might not have 2. Get water and
right.
tea, I ate my snacks before we sat
Yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah.
But I need to find healthier snacks. Right now it's Monster Energy drinks and chips, and that's not going to sustain. So
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's kind of hard though because you don't want anything that involves too much with the fingers. But I really like veggies and hummus for a snack.
Mhm. Oh,
Uh,
hummus and avocado.
yeah.
I love avocado.
Yes. Yes.
Brain fuel.
So good. Yeah. Um, I imagine the scene hopping does work very well for you though, being with the ADHD like that. That I always kind of like to have like a couple of projects that I'm at, like in different stages, so that when I kind of hit a block in one, I can be like, oh, let's work on this other idea that I had. So
Unfortunately, I have several right now that
right,
I'm
right,
having. So it's great to have lots of options, and then it's hard because it's like, how do I finish one?
right, right, because it kind of feels like you're in the middle of all of them at the same time. Yeah.
yeah. My ADHD also kind of like has that thing where no matter which thing I'm working on, the others are like, hey, what about me? So if you work
Right,
on one, you feel like you're not doing anything for the others. So when you work on the others, like you're not working on that one. And like you're always sort of haunted by all the things you're not doing, but should be
right.
doing.
We were on our way home from a book signing that I just did over the weekend, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, my goal for 2024 is to finish the 3rd book in my horror series. Everybody's waiting for this book in my series. And my brain goes, actually, here's a fully thought out plot for a totally different book. How about
Right,
I'm like, could you not?
right. That shiny new idea is
Oh,
always so
rude.
appealing.
Yeah.
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
I would, if I were you, just write that out as much as I can, just sort of the plan
Right.
of it. So at a later time, I can reread it and maybe it'll come back.
Oh,
Yeah.
if you guys could see the notes app in my phone.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh my
same.
gosh.
It's such a mess.
At least it's all on the phone and it's always on hand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the most important part of writing?
For me, I have a really hard time writing unless I can find out feel who the main character is as if they're a real person. Because I can put them in any kind of situation and I can make them do what I want. But if I can't find them as a person, my story is not going to have that emotional connection. So figuring out that characterization, even if it's not a character driven story, is really important. I try not to write before I actually write the process, write out what each of the major events is going to be, because that's going to change based on who the characters are that pop up as I go. So for me, it's just like honing in a little bit. And that's probably because of the ADD in my brain. The other thing is just trying to make sure that it's prioritized, because as a mom, I have 100,000 other things that I do in my life. So to make the writing process happen, I have to set that time aside for myself, which I'm sure you guys know is incredibly difficult, because you'll sit down and you'll write for 10 minutes and somebody needs something, you know.
Right.
You're like, oh, I was just getting in the zone.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
things take a year to be written when they could have taken a couple of weeks. So
Yes.
get to know the characters, make it a priority. You know, if writing is your outlet, like it is for me, then it's important. So
It is very important.
It very much is.
Writing time is so crucial. Because that creativity is a part of like our inner selves that we really need to nurture, no matter what your creative outlet is. So I love that answer. I was going to say something and I just lost it. Of course, we edit this. Don't worry, it'll come back. But yeah, I love that answer. I know what I was going to ask you. How do you get to know your characters so well? Like, what does the process look like for getting to know them?
most of my main characters have little pieces of myself. And so like when I sit down to write a story, I have to be able to relate to at least one important component of that character. And then I sort of build their world and who they are around that one component. So in my first published novella, Dealings in the Dark, my main character, Alexandria, was very angry. She felt like she was betrayed and lied to for her entire life. And that was something that I was struggling with at the time. So when I built Alexandria out, I knew I was only going to give her 48 hours. I knew I didn't want her to be a fully rounded person. And so I just sat down and I thought about like, how would it feel to be going through the things that she's going through? What parts of her are going to be affected by the things that she's going through? Is she going to be able to trust people? Is she going to be petty? Is she going to be reactive? And I kind of tried to almost interview her in my mind like a real person. And when I did that, the way that she behaved in the story was much easier for me to manage. When I went into The Ruin, which is my first like full length, like 400-page book, that character was an embodiment of the frustrations that I've had with the American medical system and all the pain that I felt in losing people who have had to fight with that medical system. And so I had to kind of sit and process my grief with the things that I'd gone through and focus on what that experience felt like and what would be relatable to other people to build out Kara's character. And I also, along this journey, I am a strong advocate for mental health and therapy. So I will actually take the things that I'm considering putting into my characters and I'll actually discuss it with a mental health professional to try to make them as relatable and realistic as I can. Because realistic characters are the characters you root for, and characters that are too shiny or far, far, far too broken are the characters you're just like,
Right.
you know. So definitely putting together all those resources. But yeah, the mental interview, sometimes I even write it down. That's really how I get to know my character.
Yeah. No, I love that. I like to interview people for research as well, like actual, like if I have a setting in mind, I'll try and find somebody who like lives there or knows that area well. And interviews are like great, whether it's character interviews or interviewing for research. I find that much easier than just slogging through website after website trying to find the information you need. So it's much more engaging to me. So I love that. Yeah, character interviews are so fun. I know we do them as authors a lot for like promo and stuff, but getting to know your characters is so crucial before you begin writing. So that's a great idea.
Yeah. And then they continue to talk to you, you know, and
yes,
you're like, and now you do this, and they're like, no, that doesn't sound like me. And you're like, I need you to for the plot. And they're like, nah,
I'd rather not. Yeah.
I'd much rather do this, you know, and then you've got to work around that.
Or sometimes they refuse to talk to you, which is what's going on with my third book in my horror series. I'm like, hey, Corinne,
what you doing?
I need you. And she's like, maybe later.
Right. Non-committal.
Yes. It's one of the hardest parts of writing, I think, is when they stop talking to you and you're like, Poke, you alive? You okay?
Right.
Yeah.
The good
And
old poke.
sometimes it's like losing a friend. You're like, "Hi,
Yeah.
did you ghost me? Like we were going somewhere together."
Yeah, yeah,
Right,
absolutely.
right.
All right. Do you have a favorite author and what is something that they do well?
Oh goodness. Okay, so this question I wrote down a bunch of things. Hold on.
Sure.
Because I am a mood writer and a mood reader, and so I can never
Mm,
just stick to one thing, which I'm sure also influences my inability to stay in one genre. So,
right.
as far as horror authors goes, because I write in the horror genre as well, right now I'm currently influenced by Alexis Henderson, J.R. Erickson, and Darcy Coates. And what I really appreciate about these authors is totally different. So Alexis Henderson has a way with just absolutely building out a world with only a couple of paragraphs at a time. And I adore that because you get to know these things, but it's not all shoved at you. And then as you go, your perception of things changes. And I thought that was really cool. Actually, Alexis Henderson is one of the reasons my main character in Dealings in the Dark is named Alexandria Hendricks. Alexandria is my daughter's middle name, and then I took Hendricks from Henderson. J.R. Erickson is a Michigan paranormal suspense and mystery author. And I really like the way that she builds engaging scenarios with her stories because you want to find the answers, but the answers aren't always super obvious. And with mysteries and suspense type things, sometimes it's too easy to guess the twist at the end,
Right.
which I usually don't get with her. And then Darcy Coates is really great for characterization. And she's actually one of the authors that I'm reading more of right now because I want to get to like study the way she does things. Even the characters that you don't like in the books that you're not supposed to like are well rounded. And I think that's really cool. But outside of the horror genre, I'm a big fan of Colleen Gleason. She writes multiple genres as well, but the books that I'm a fan of were historical romantasy, vampire hunters, and I started reading that in middle school. She's also a Michigan author based out of Brighton. And then Jennifer Saviano. I actually don't read motorcycle romances very often, and right now I'm halfway through book 1 of Savior, and I have already like queued up the second book on
Mm-hmm.
Audible ready to go because of the way that she describes things and creates characters too. And then Kennedy Sutton, who
Mhm.
is like all around an amazing human being, but in addition to that, makes you feel so strongly for the characters and their situations. Like she made me cry with the sneaky.
Yeah.
And I don't cry for books. Like, and I sent her a picture of me sobbing. I was like, why did you do this to me? She goes, well, you're not the first one.
Yeah, I'm sure
No.
she was riding that high though from that picture.
Yes.
Oh gosh, how wonderful.
I finished Feathers at Sea, which is her second book in this series, at like 2 a.m. And like I was just like just like too sad to cry. She
Yeah,
has a way of like hurting you so bad, but it's so good.
Yeah, it
yeah,
hurts so good for sure.
So
And
good.
like you feel it coming because you're like, oh no, I like this person. Don't do it, Kennedy. And she goes,
right.
have
She does.
to.
Yeah.
Nobody is safe with me.
No.
Right, right.
And
She's
I
one
love
of
that
those.
because it's like whenever something happens and someone gets hurt or they die out in the book, it's like you lose a real person and you have to
Right.
process that empty hole. Like
Your characters
Yeah,
are really
yeah,
real.
it's amazing. I think I was up until about 1 o'clock in the morning finishing the Sneaky Last, and I kept
yeah.
checking my phone every 10 minutes. I was like, I have to go to sleep. My kid's gonna be up in 5 hours. No, it's fine.
You're like, I have 5 pages
Yeah,
left.
right.
I'm almost there.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why I don't read before bed because I will be up all night reading. Yeah.
Mhm.
Everyone's always like, "Oh, read a book to relax before going to bed." I'm like, books
Mhm.
do the opposite for me. They get me amped up and excited, and I'm just like, I need to know what's happening next. Yeah.
I've definitely missed my bedtime more times than I can count. So
Right, right. Oh my goodness. Um, what is something that you have learned from the writing process?
when I started this writing journey, I thought I was just going to put words on a page and be done.
Mhm.
Which, like, I should have known better. I was an English teacher before I went into this whole. It's a whole thing. Anyway, I thought I
Yeah.
was just going to put something out and be done, and it was just, nobody was ever going to read it. So why did it matter? And like, it was just a story I wanted to tell. And as I started actually getting people who wanted to read my books, I was like, oh, the things I put out do matter, right? And so I realized how much effort you need to go through to make something quality.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people think you wrote a book, oh, you wrote it and you released it. That's the end
Right.
of it. But that's not how it goes. There's
Uh-uh.
writing and then stopping part of the way through because you're like, I hate everything I've written and I need to go back
Yeah.
through the steps, so I can't go forward. And then there's, oh, let me reread that last chapter real quick before I write the next one. And then you end up stuck on that chapter. And then there's, the actual editing and revising process and the cutting of the precious words and the I didn't put enough here and I need to somehow figure out how to do that the right way. And then after it's done and it's ready to go out into the world, there's this weird mixture of like, yay, I'm so excited. And also, I'm panicking because people are going to read this now. And
Yeah.
also an emptiness because you're like, well, what do I do now?
Right.
This has like consumed my entire being for the entire time I've been writing this.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not just like I wrote something and here it is. It's a whole emotional journey from beginning to end. And it's not
Yeah.
always easy.
Absolutely.
And you need a good group of people who are going to convince you not to throw it away every
Right.
15% or so.
Yeah, no, it's like, there's so many stages that you go through emotionally when you're writing. You're just like, oh, I love where this is going. This is great. Wait, this may not be as great as I thought it was. Like, I got to look at this again. And then, like, I hate this. This sucks. I've read it a million times and I don't know what to do with it. Yeah, it's a whole roller coaster ride of just like all the emotions.
And they're like problems you don't expect to have. Like in The Ruin, there was a 3-day stint where I was like, I just need this character to go from point A to point B in this hallway, right? But I want to do it in a way that's not just like he walked over there, right?
Yeah, right.
And I wanted to like take you with him. And I sat there and I sat there, and my husband goes, so why can't he just walk over there?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I was like, but he can, but he's like, well, if it's this big of a deal and the book's not going to get written, he just walked over there.
Right, right.
And you get hung up on like the strangest things,
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So,
sometimes I just like bracket the thing of he walked through the hallway, fix it later, and then I keep going.
Right.
Like when I'm feeling a little more inspired, or when it comes to me 3 days later in the shower.
Oh yeah, or when you're like driving home from work and you have to pull off the side of the road for a minute, be like, hold on, sorry. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, no texting while driving.
Pull over.
Michigan. Yes, pull over. Somewhere
I use the diction on my phone sometimes and just talk it out. But my phone has no idea what like my fantasy words are, so it makes a close approximation. So going back to reread it is really funny.
Oh
it's
yeah,
so hilarious. Yeah.
What did I even say?
Right.
Yeah. But absolutely to every single thing that you just said, because like we watch like movies or TV series and the authors, they might struggle to write their book, but it's them staring at the computer at the blank screen and just like, oh, I don't know what to do. And it's like, sure, we do that, but that's the tiniest portion of our
Right.
A totally valid part of writing is staring at the screen with existential dread. However,
yes, it's the rereading. It's the shock when you get your edits back and there's 3 million notes.
Right. Oh my God.
When you thought that you had made it amazing, and no, there's so much more work.
Or when you think it's absolute garbage, and someone else goes, "Wow, that was amazing," and you're like,
"Yes." What?
Wait, what?
Yeah. I was all done and ready to can that. And they're like, no.
Yeah.
Both sides of it,
Right. That is such a nice reassurance to get though. It's like, oh no, this is great. Keep
and
doing what you're doing.
I feel bad because I also edit, so I understand the red pen, but then like if I haven't made a story bleed by the time it goes back to the person who's written it, and I know there are things I could tell them, I didn't do my job. So I see both sides of the panic on that one, and I'm like, oh, I love you.
Yes. No, as an editor, you're always trying to find like some suggestions to make because you want it to be worth the time and effort that they pay you for. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then a lot of the edit suggestions that you'll see are like, "Hey, I would just move this around," or, "Hey, I'm gonna put a comma here," so,
Right, right.
and it still comes back all red, and it looks scary, but it's really just
Yeah,
tiny things.
yeah.
And I edited for someone, and they were like, "I am a horrible author. I should never publish this." I said, "No, you're an author with a work in progress.
Right.
Like, if it comes back to you perfect, your editor didn't do their job.
Yeah.
And also, if it's perfect on the first go around for everyone in the world, that's no fun. Like,
Right, right.
anybody could do it, and anybody can do it, but like, you know what I mean? Anybody could just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
put something out there and it wouldn't be that journey. So,
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I
for
have
sure.
met authors who just published their raw,
Yeah,
unedited manuscript, and it's a little bit awkward. You want to be supportive and help, other
mm,
indies, but at the same
mhm.
time, you're like, maybe next time,
right. Well,
consider an editor. I know a
it,
few if you're
Or
looking for
beta readers, yeah.
yeah,
and beta readers. Yeah, there's ways to do it, but you need to do it right.
right. And
Mm,
we learn and we grow. When I put out
Mhm.
Dealings in the Dark, it's so funny because it's one of my most popular books and people really, really like it. And I read back through it and go, okay, well, I'm
Mhm.
so glad you like
right,
it.
right,
Well,
right,
see
yeah.
how far you've come,
I
like,
feel like if you don't cringe at your earlier books, you
Yeah,
haven't learned anything.
mhm,
yeah,
But then also, like, when you really think about it, so editing is super important, and I'll always be an advocate of that because I was an English teacher.
mhm,
But I also understand that people spend their money where they have the most
right,
impact. And the
right.
nice thing about being an indie author is that, say you made a mistake, you have total control over fixing that.
Yeah,
So
you
if you
do.
make a mistake and you think, hey, I don't need to edit this, and then you do release it to the world, and
mm,
then you get that feedback like, mm,
yeah,
Mhm, mhm.
you can do that again.
You can fix it, yeah.
You can
absolutely,
fix
yeah,
it. And you can still tell the story that you want to tell, but
yeah.
definitely at least get some eyes. Definitely have your
Mhm,
whatever program you're typing on read it back to you out loud.
Right,
mhm.
right.
Like,
Yes, I could not agree more. Actually, Son of Deception, my first book, I came out with a second edition. This time it
Yeah.
has a map in the front. This time I put in the content warnings. This time
mhm.
Mhm.
fixed a little bit of things that had been bothering me. And like, you can do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when
absolutely.
Dealings in the Dark was made into an audiobook, Paige Reisenfeld narrated it live for me on TikTok. And I was listening to it going, okay, I caught a mistake. Okay, I
Yeah,
caught a mistake. So I went back, and even after like going back through over a year later, I
right.
still caught a few things.
Mhm.
And it's important too that when it comes to that whole editing process, just give yourself some grace because we're all
Yeah.
human beings. And I just read a traditionally published book 2 days ago that had like 6 typos in it. And
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
that
they are
a whole
persistent.
team of people.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Typos are so persistent. They're in
Mhm.
everyone's book.
yes.
It's just gonna happen,
The author was referring to brakes on a vehicle and wrote
Yeah,
breaks. Like,
yes,
Mhm.
yes.
your
Spell check
processing
isn't gonna
program is
find
not going
it.
to catch that. It's a correct word. It's
Mm,
just the wrong word in context.
yeah,
So
Mhm.
you have to give yourself a little leeway and understand that you will make mistakes. Understand that people might be upset about them.
right,
It's
right.
okay. Um, but it's all learning and growing, and yeah, looking back on that first
Absolutely.
book and going, that's
Mhm.
okay. It's part of the process.
Yes, yes,
It
for
is part of the
sure. The
process. Give
cringe
yourself some
is
grace there.
the cringe
Yeah, and
factor
your
is
your
definitely
readers won't see all the tiny things that you see on the second read through either, or the third
right.
367th read through because you've read this book so many times. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you're seeing all the things you would do differently, and they're seeing the world you created.
Yeah,
I love that.
that's right.
That's
If you could give a new author one piece of advice, what would it be?
The one thing I always say is get out of your own way. Get out of your own way because you are your own biggest enemy in most things in your life, whether it's self doubt from imposter syndrome or setting something that you care about aside because it feels maybe it's selfish for you to take that time for yourself. Just get out of your own way. Like, if you don't do it, you're never going to know.
Mhm.
And that was the biggest problem I had with The Ruin. I would write a chapter and then I would convince myself nobody's ever going to read this. I'm
right.
nobody. Like, this book only matters to me. And I was pouring my heart into every chapter and feeling completely defeated along the way. I've since published this book. It's won an award. Like,
Nice.
I wouldn't have known,
Right.
just do the thing. if you're uncomfortable, do it anyway. If you're nervous, do it anyway. If you're scared, do it scared, but get out of your own way.
I love that because it's so true that like a lot of times we stop ourselves before we begin. But the thing is, you rarely regret what you do. You're more likely to regret what you don't do. And so
Mhm.
it's like, at least give it the try. Worst case scenario, no one reads it. Well, they weren't going to read it if you didn't write it anyway, right?
Exactly.
So you're not losing anything, but you have a lot to gain from
Yeah,
doing
and my
that.
my only caveat to that is make sure that if you're doing it and you're uncomfortable because you know what you're doing might be harmful, you need to
Hmm.
check that before you do it.
Yeah,
Sensitivity readers and beta readers, alpha readers even,
yeah,
great resources to make sure that what you're doing is not harmful to a community,
yeah,
especially if you're writing on very sensitive topics. Bound and Betrayed deals with the concept of schizophrenia versus demonic possession. It's very important to me that I represented people in a positive light,
yeah,
and one of the things I did was include resources in the back of the book for if you think you might have schizophrenia or you think someone you know might be schizophrenic. And then, I put a note at the bottom like, I am not a medical professional. These are just the resources I used as a place for your starting point, and always make sure to tell people, be honest with people.
yeah.
My next release, Wicked Little Rabbit, is an erotic horror. It has trigger warnings as long as my forearm. Like, trigger
Mm-hmm.
warnings are important to me. They are informed consent when it comes to reading. And I know not everybody feels that way, but
Right.
my opinion is if you don't want to read it, you can skip it. It's, just like turning another page. But I also included information on the back of that book for assault survivors, because
Right.
that's one of the big triggers in the book. So do it scared, but do it to the best of your abilities
Yeah.
with integrity to the communities that you are representing. That's
Mhm.
really important.
Yeah. I agree. That is a great caveat to add.
All right. So we've talked about the parts of writing. What is your favorite part of writing?
My favorite part of writing is probably the part right after the beginning when you're getting into the rising action and you're starting to kind of see like real events taking place in the story, because that's where you start bringing in all these side characters that you didn't know were even going to be in your book. Or at least that's what I do. And then
Yeah.
I get to put some like witty banter and snarky things in there. Drafting dialogue is one of my favorite parts of the actual drafting process.
Hmm.
And I actually enjoy editing because I can make it better and watch it shine. Um,
Right.
when I hated it in round one, by the time I get to round three, I'm like, that's much better.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's
uh,
very satisfying to edit your own stuff sometimes. Yeah.
it really is. And like when you go back through after you've been stuck and you've struggled and you've doubted yourself, and then you read
Mhm.
that one line and you're like, oh, I wrote that. That was
Mhm.
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah. That zinger. I love it. Yeah.
good.
No,
Oh,
I actually I prefer editing other people's stuff because I
mhm.
enjoy making it shine, helping make it better without the pressure of like I have to make it better because it's my
Mhm.
writing. That's a little overwhelming for me because I don't stress about the first draft because I'm always like it's called rough for a reason. It's meant to be messy. I don't have to worry about it. All the magic will happen in editing and rewriting. And then so when I get to the editing rewriting stage, I'm just like crap, the pressure. So I really love editing other people's stuff. My own stuff, I'm just kind of like, oh, now I got to do the hard work.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It
editing
is
other
so much
people's stuff.
easier.
Oh, yeah, and that's what I was trained for because I was a teacher, so for me, it's like going through
Yes.
and grading papers like, "Hey, you need an introductory clause right here. Oh, this would be great if you," you know,
Right. It's like
and then they're
second
like,
nature
"Oh."
to you. Yeah. It's like the back of your hand. You know it all.
Yes, I just finished, editing for Evie Black for her upcoming release, Epistle, which is going to be phenomenal, by the way. She writes one heck of a story.
Yeah.
Her hashtag, by the way, is Donovan Does It Better, and I
Oh,
agree
okay.
because Donovan is oh, he's a special kind of broken.
Yeah.
Which is my favorite.
Yeah.
But, I when we were editing it in the process and just like moving sentences around, and we were both like, "Oh wow, look at the way that changes, the way
Mm,
we read things." Or I edit for Brian Scala, who's another amazing human being, and one of the things that we've worked on is like repetition because we all have those phrases
right.
that we
Right. That we
say. For
use over
me,
and over again. Yeah.
right, it's all right or my own or just
Mhm.
because, and like
Right.
we found when he and I always joke, we're like, oh, are you gonna grin mightily? Because in his
Right.
short
Right.
stories, they grin mightily a lot. And then
Yeah.
we have this group chat for me and the people that I've edited for, and we talk our way through it and create this sort of like emotional support channel. And it's just fun. It's just fun watching everybody's stuff just become something stunning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a special kind of magic being an editor, because it's like every time somebody publishes a book, like I'm so proud for them because they're making their dreams come true, and I get to watch along and like cheer them along
Oh, yeah.
on the sideline. So I
You saw
love
what it
that
was.
role.
You saw what it became. You know,
Yes,
it's
yes.
like you're a proud auntie. You know,
Right?
Yeah.
And then you see their
Yeah.
face when they hold it up and they're like, look at my book,
Yes.
baby.
Look
And
at
I'm
my
like,
babe.
yay.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, I love
It's
that.
amazing.
It really is. It's such a good
Mhm.
feeling. Do
All
you
right. So
have a least favorite part of writing?
Honestly, it's what happens after the writing. It's the marketing, because you can't just be like, hey, here's a book. It's great.
buy it.
I wish you could. Yeah, I wish that's all you had to do.
Oh my gosh. Marketing is a full-time job. And like there are some really great things about marketing, because I wouldn't have met half of my readers if I hadn't been out here, putting those videos on TikTok and those posts on Instagram, and going into the individual threads on Facebook where people are like, hey, I want a witchy book. And I'm like, hi, I've got one. Like I wouldn't have met these people. And so there's like these relationships that get built and this community that comes together. But in the meantime, you talked about the writing process where people think you're just sitting there like this, like staring at the screen. I do that for marketing. I'm looking at my phone going, all right, how much energy do I have today?
To put into it.
Where am I
Yeah.
going to put it? Because I can't be on Threads and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all these things all at once, especially with 2 little kids.
Yeah.
So it can be very draining. And then, if you don't have a budget for actual advertising, that's really tricky. So it's a lot of work. The thing is that this entire author journey is a work of heart, not a work of instant gratification.
Yeah.
And so you have to put in the time or people don't know you exist. And that's why I'm going on a book tour in 2024. I'm going to all sorts of different places. And someone asked me like, oh, isn't that expensive? I was like, yes.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
And they were like, why are you going? And I was like, well, for one thing, I'm not the kind of author that sells books online very often. I'm not the Amazon person. I'm not usually the one that people search out in Kindle Unlimited, because my genres aren't heavily romance based. And those are the kinds of readers you typically see more of in KU.
Yeah.
But for another thing, nobody knows I exist. So I'm over here just like, hi.
Yeah.
You see me,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I go to these events and I meet people and I make connections with authors and narrators and influencers and readers. And like all of a sudden, oh yeah, do you remember that one person? And then they might pick up a book. Right. And so I don't go into these events expecting to make money and sell hundreds of books. I go into these events hoping to meet the 5 right people.
Right.
And those 5 right people will tell the other 5 right people. And that's one of the things I try to explain. Never count anybody out. Follower count is irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. You're looking for the 5 right people.
That's such a good attitude to have.
It really is, yeah. Because you can't do everything. Even when you want to, there's just too much to do when it comes to marketing and social media and all that stuff. But like if you focus on like, I just need to find the 5 right people, that takes a lot of the pressure off of like, I need to get this in front of 1,000 people.
Right. And if you find the 5 right people this week and you find 5 more right people next week, those 200 views on TikTok don't matter all that much.
Right.
Because those 5 people could become 25 people. And those 25 people, I don't do math. I taught English. A lot of people.
Yes, exponentially, I think is the word. Yeah.
The number. But yeah, it makes a huge difference. And then the other thing I think people don't understand either is that like very few authors are Stephen King and J.K. Rowling and Sarah J. Maas who can do wonderful things and go out and sell books and, make a full-time 6-figure living off of these books with 10. And, even Sarah J. Maas, she's got like 20 books out, right? But like very few of us will ever be the person who's buying the 100-acre lot with the the 6 store, whatever. Like most of us are just out here trying to do the work and trying to exist in a society of other people who are trying to exist. And can you be that person? Sure.
Mhm.
Right.
right?
Well,
It
some
takes
people get lucky and their debut is a hit,
Mhm,
Yeah.
or like, they get caught on pretty fast.
mhm,
But the majority of the people, it's their second series or their sixth book,
Right. Right.
or like it isn't until they get big that they hit that critical mass and like
mhm,
become super,
Mm-hmm.
so all you can do is just keep rolling along and doing all
Right.
the right things so that
right.
if an opportunity does come up, you are ready for it. When you meet
Mhm,
those 5 people, you're ready for them. You don't,
yes.
Right.
Yeah, and you wanna make sure that whoever you are along that process is your authentic self, or
Mhm,
at least the authentic person you're presenting. I know some people like to, be characteristic in the way that they present
Right.
themselves, which is fine. But, like, you wanna be consistent and you wanna be that person all the way through because people want to know you.
Yeah.
And for us who are out here, like, "Oh, hi, I need 5 people today," those people care about you. And
Yeah.
that's why one of the other reasons I don't sell a lot of books online is that I meet readers and we connect with each other. And
Mhm.
then they're like, "Let me check out this person's story,"
Right.
you know?
mhm,
And then the other part of that whole thing is like, I can't compare myself to somebody else, and they shouldn't be comparing themselves to me either.
mhm.
Right.
Because what works for me isn't gonna work for you, and my 5 right people aren't your 5 right people. Like,
Exactly.
how
Mhm.
boring would the world be if every person loved every book? You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, it's trial and error, and it's dedication, and you
Yeah.
just keep going.
Mhm.
Yes, 100% agree. And yeah, it's a lot of times the overnight successes, you don't see the years of work that they put into
Right.
becoming, like Kirsha was saying,
Yes.
being ready and having
Mhm.
that opportunity present itself at the right time. They've put in all this work behind the scenes so that the opportunity can take off.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But yes, you want to do this because it's something that you want to do. Sometimes it's something that you have to do, not because you're like, oh, I want to have a mansion, right? That's
Right.
the reason why I
Yeah.
encourage people not to write for that reason because it's a lot more work that goes into it.
Yes.
There's a
Mhm.
whole the business side of authoring
Oh,
that's completely separate from writing the stories to begin with.
oh, yeah.
But if you're doing this because you're like, oh, I want to make a quick buck, that's not usually how it's going to work out.
No, the amount of money that you sink into just one short book can be
Right.
astounding, and
Mhm.
you don't know if you're gonna make that money back, but you do it because you need to do it, and your story needs to be told.
It makes you a
Um,
better you. Yeah.
right, and one of the authors that I really look up to in the social media realm is Rebecca Thorne, who, she did You Can't Spell Treason Without T, and
Okay.
one of the reasons I look up to her is because she talks about all of this stuff, and she's
Right.
very transparent about her journey, and she's like, "Yeah, I just signed a six-figure deal with Tor. However,
Right.
XYZ had to happen, and before that, I did ABC, and
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
it was like, sure, I'm a cool six-figure author now, but
Yeah.
it took time and it's gonna take time. And so you wanna find people who are willing to share that information with you too
Yeah.
when you're trying to start your journey. The only thing I would say is don't push people to share that information with you.
Right. Right.
Because I have seen people press on other authors, and I used to do like monthly sales wrap ups to try to like
Hmm.
show what a realistic sales month might look like for an indie author. But we have to remember too that that information is personal and it is private, and people will set boundaries and share what they want to share. The internet is a confusing place.
Hmm.
It blurs those boundaries. So we just have to let people be people too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. Yes.
You're completely right. Yes. And I mean, all of that is one reason why we do this show is to help authors get a little bit more light, help them get like you might find, your next favorite author on our show, getting to know them a little better.
Right. And
Oh,
then
you guys have had a couple of them.
Yes.
talking about the different writing processes is really helpful for authors too watching the show because there's so many different ways to do this. Like you were saying, there's no one right
Mhm.
way of doing this. There's so many different ways. So we love to ask those questions about how do people get, from idea to
Yeah.
finished manuscript.
Mhm. All right. What influences your writing?
So the thing that I've tried to do the most with my writing is have some sort of social commentary, wrapped up in these fantastical settings. So I do horror, thriller, and fantasy. All of it's got some element of supernatural, but the characters are going to go through some kind of struggle that you can relate to, whether that's a struggle that I've related to. Someone has come to me before with a story that they wanted me to write, wanted to shed more information on, like in Bound and Betrayed with the schizophrenia versus demonic possession. Someone was like, how can we represent the way people who are different are treated? And I am a person who lives with multiple sclerosis, and I am often categorized as different, which is not the same thing as schizophrenia, but is still sort of that perception of not belonging and being the odd one out sometimes.
Right.
So I pull from my own experiences. I pull from things that people bring to me. And then, the news is full of things that don't get discussed the way that they should be. And I think a lot of that is that the sensational things get discussed and the things that are more normal or everyday struggles get kind of brushed off.
Right.
So sometimes I look for those little things that just get mentioned and dropped. I want people to be able to find themselves or someone they know in my book, because realistic problems in fictional settings help create that character you care about and can help open eyes to things that you may not have considered. When I was younger, did not think that writing had any kind of political commentary to it. As an adult, I now believe that all writing has political commentary to it, whether you mean it to or not, social commentary to it. So I just try to steer it in the way that's most effective.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to talk about mental health issues in general, just because the stigma around it means we don't talk about it, means people aren't getting the help and the resources they need.
Mm-hmm. Mental health and any kind of invisible illness as well.
Yeah, absolutely. People always think disability has to look a certain way, and they make a lot of assumptions about people that they don't know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, on that subject, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at 20 years old. I was in college, and I had brought it up to my physicians, and they were like, no, you're just an anxious college kid. And I told one of them, I said, no, I think I'm going to die young. Like I'm so convinced that there's something horribly wrong with me that I think I'm going to die, not by my doing, but it's going to happen. And I just kept, getting brushed off.
Right.
When I finally got a diagnosis, people were like, oh, you weren't kidding.
Yeah, right.
No. But even now, I'm 31 years old now. I've had multiple sclerosis. I've had a diagnosis of it for 11 years.
Yeah.
The way people look at me when I go to the store and I have to use a wheelchair, but I'm still semi-mobile, or the way people go, well, you're just overreacting, or you're being dramatic, or, well, it would be better if you just stopped doing that and did this,
right. Or just try harder. You can get through the whole day.
Yes.
Like,
have you tried yoga?
Right.
Have you tried drinking water? Like,
right. Sometimes the suggestions are just like so simple, and it's like, if that would have worked, I would have done that by now.
Maybe cut sugar out of your diet. Have you tried cutting sugar out of your diet? Did it fix all of your problems?
I mean, yoga and water and cutting sugar, all good things, but it's not always as simple as that.
It doesn't. It's not a cure-all, and then
absolutely
you go through your days just wanting to be understood. And so I want to fix that with some of my characters, at least bring some awareness to it. I am not an expert on schizophrenia. I could not become an expert on schizophrenia without going back to school and interviewing lots and lots and lots of people and studying them and observing them and interacting with them on a daily basis. But what I can do is get information from reputable sources. I can speak to people. I can make sure that I address things with appropriate concern and have sensitivity readers and alpha readers and beta readers. Like, I just want people to be seen. And oftentimes it's so hard to be seen in the real world that we turn to these fictional settings, not just for escapism, but for understanding. And I want to provide that.
It is usually through the lens of fiction that we can tell the biggest truths.
Yes.
I agree.
Right. No, it's much easier to address things when it's not a real life person. Sometimes I feel like when it's got that fictional setting, then we're able to really dig deep into the truth of things.
What would you say has been your most significant writing victory so far?
So I have an indie author bucket list, which is one of the things I started early on because I wanted to see myself growing. And I knew that this wasn't going to be an overnight journey, but I also knew that if I didn't see myself being successful somewhere, I would feel discouraged and I would probably stop. I
Mhm.
was one of those gifted and talented kids in school
Yeah.
who was just used to being really good at things. And so I got really good at lists and organizing and checking things off and like doing a
Mhm.
good job along the way. And the bucket list made a big difference. And I just went through it the other day, and I have categories based on sales and orders and reviews and feedback and all sorts of things. I just went through it the other day, and I got to highlight a bunch of new things and check them off the list and add new ones underneath because it shouldn't stop. It should keep growing with you. And one of the things that I didn't anticipate checking off the list was being someone's first ever pre-order for a book.
Oh, yay!
And I was like, you picked me and my book. Yay. I'm sorry. Yay.
Right, right. I'm sorry you chose badly, but yes,
Right.
amazing. Yeah,
I'm mean to me. I'm my own boss and I'm mean to me all the time. I need
yeah,
to get an HR department. But like it's it's not always the things that you think.
yeah.
At this point in the last year and a half, I am a 3-time award-winning author, which I never thought would happen
Really
because I
good.
never thought
Yeah,
anybody would even read my books. I have 155 pre-orders on my upcoming release, and I
yay.
don't know how that happened, so thank you.
Mhm.
I'm really appreciative because I'm still over here like, "Oh, people are reading my stuff. Cool. Maybe."
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
Um, but then, when people reach out to me, like I had a reader who reached out to me and she was like, I'm visually impaired. And so I read your book and it took me a while. And she apologized to me for it taking a while. And I was like, please don't. Like, take
Yeah,
all the time you need. It is your book. I wrote it and gave it to you, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
But then she said, as someone who is visually impaired, it's very hard for me to see things. And the way you described the world made me see it.
oh, I love
And I
that.
was
Yes,
like,
Aw.
right.
it's
That's beautiful.
I can spout off numbers like
Yeah,
statistics and percentages and money and orders but like
what a
when the
compliment,
readers talk to
though.
me,
Yeah,
yeah, when the readers come to me and tell me that my book made a difference for them,
yeah.
those are the most meaningful things. I had someone on my ARC team for Wicked Little Rabbit who was an essay survivor, and she wanted to be on the team, and I said, please, please, please check your trigger warnings.
Mhm.
Chapters 23 and 25 are very explicit essay because I'm trying to bring awareness to this topic.
Yeah,
And she was like, okay. I said, take your time, do it in breaks, chunks if you want, take breaks. Like if you need to DNF it, I understand. And
mm,
she read through this book, and I saw the bubbles come up,
yeah.
right, in the chat, and I was like,
Oh no, yeah.
"Reh." And she was like, I have never felt so seen.
Yes.
Aw.
Oh, that's the response you wanted. Yes.
I literally cried, like,
Yeah.
because I write horror, and how do you do that? Um, but it's moments like that when the readers talk to me. That's why I do what I do.
Right.
I could
Yes.
sell
Yeah.
hundreds and thousands of books someday, maybe, hopefully, something, but,
Right.
like, that's not why I do it. This is why I
No,
do it.
100%. Because it's like you write
Mhm.
horror, you want to scare people, but you don't want to victimize them.
Right, and
So,
then,
say,
like
yeah, her saying out of everything she could have said that she felt seen, like that is the perfect response you wanted. Yeah.
Mhm.
and then
I'm
like,
tearing up thinking about
I
it
I
because
know, I'm
that
over here
is
like,
beautiful.
don't look at
Yeah.
me, I'm wiping my nose. But, like, on top of that, just outside of, like, the reader and author sphere of things, I have a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Mhm.
And my 2-year-old is just like, "Yeah, mom's working." He doesn't understand yet. But my
Yeah.
7-year-old is seeing me do these things, and she's seeing me go to shows and talk to new people and write new books and send them out into the world. And she came up to me the other day, and this is so funny because this is a perfect example of parenting and children. She goes, "Mom, how many books do you have?" I was like, "Oh, 5. I have 5 books now." And she goes, I
Mhm.
need to write 2 more because she's been writing books
Ah,
on her
yeah.
own. And so now she's seeing me do it, and so now she's trying it, and
Yes.
we're talking about, like, Can you change your career midway through your life? You absolutely can. Do you have to do what somebody else wants you to do forever? No, you don't. You can put the work in, and it's going to be hard, but if you love it, it's worth it, and you can do it. And I feel like when I was younger, not necessarily my parents' fault, but like the world as a whole, they were very much, you need to be a productive member of society.
You need to go to college.
You need to get the house with the white picket fence and the 2.5 children in the car and the pets. And like there were rules, right? There were guidelines, as Barbosa would say. They're guidelines, right?
Yeah, right.
And I just felt personally like if I wasn't in the box that was created for me, I wasn't doing
that.
But I don't want my kids to feel that way. And so now she tells me she wants to grow up and open a bakery and make cupcakes for all my book signings. And like she's dreaming things that she wants to do. And hopefully my son will dream things that he wants to do.
Yeah.
You know, so even if I stopped writing today, my kids have seen it.
You made your dreams happen and come true, and that teaches them they can do the same, which is beautiful.
And that's what I want. That's what I want more than anything, because they always asked us when we were little, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Right.
That was the question. And then they still ask it, but that question drives me nuts. I do not like it. And my kid was asked that question. She's like, I don't know what I want to be. I said, I know what you want to be. And she's like, what? I said, you want to be 3 things: healthy, happy, safe. And if you can have one more thing, you want to be kind.
Yes.
If you can do those 4 things in your life, then you will have lived an amazing life. I don't care what job you do, but you want to be healthy, happy, safe, and kind.
Yeah.
And so that's what my kids say when you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? Those 3 or 4 things, depending on the attention they have for the day.
No, I love that. That's so
That's
true.
a great answer.
There was a script when we were in school that like at 16, 17, you had to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life. You had to go to college and major in that, to get the degree, to get the job, and all of this stuff. And it's just like, there's so much value to be found in life beyond what you do for your job. But like American society is 100%, you are what you do for a living. You know, like it's just so built into like when you meet somebody, oh, what do you do for work? And then all these judgments that come based off that answer too. And it's just like, I love the word amateur because it comes from amor. It comes from love, right? It's meant to be something that you do because you're passionate and you want to do it, or you feel like you can't not do it. And I feel like we should be pursuing those things where we're amateurs, not professionals.
Absolutely. And
that's what makes life worth living, right? Those little joys that we find every day.
Right. And do I still think formal education is great? Absolutely. 100%. If that fits your dream, do it. Right. If you feel that you need to become a more educated member of society and that's the right way to go about it, do it. But personally, I think that there are so many more avenues to growth. And people expect me as a former teacher to be like, no, college, 100%, you go to college, right?
It's not all of my students
were college students. Some of my students were military students. Some of my students were, associate's degree students. Some of my students were master's and PhD students. And some of my students were skilled labor training students. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things.
Right.
Because we need all of those people.
Yeah.
Right. 100%. And so there's this whole perception that you have to be a certain thing. And I do not believe in that. And that I'm trying to teach my kids that they can choose their path. And it's really hard to break that mold. So hopefully they'll see this and they'll know that they can be themselves.
And there's no deadline to anything either. You don't have to do it by 25. You don't have to do X, Y, or Z by any age. People have published their first book at 60. You know what I mean? There's always, as long as you're alive, there's always a chance to do anything you want. So Kirsha asked her favorite question. I'm going to ask my favorite question. Is there any writing advice that you hate? You just think it's poorly given, or broad strokes, whatever the reason? Any writing advice you hate?
So I have a problem with a lot of writing advice, just because, like we mentioned earlier, what works for me isn't going to work for you.
Absolutely.
If it does, that's great. If it doesn't, try something new. And there's this preconceived notion that everybody has to do things the same way, which is just not the case. But one of the things that I saw somebody on TikTok, maybe like a year ago, harping on was the use of the word that, right? Take all of the that's out of your book. Don't do that.
It serves
Oh,
a function.
geez.
Yes.
Right. There are places where that
Yeah.
should not be there. We put it there because that's the way we speak. Like,
Yeah.
just take that one sentence. We put it there because that's the way we speak. We put it there because that's the way that we speak.
Mhm.
Both of those things are correct.
Right.
If you take all of the that's out, first off, you're going to end up with grammatically busted sentences.
Right.
Second, you're not going to have characters that speak naturally.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Don't just go through your book and choose a word that you know you overuse and just be like, find, delete, find, delete.
Right.
I have
Right.
read some of those books, you guys, and they could have used a few that's.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
And justs, you know, because
Right.
we speak
Oh.
like that.
That is one of my overused words.
Right. But like, it
Just,
still
but
needs to be
it
in
still
there.
needs to happen. It's just
Mhm.
go through and adjust the ones that can be adjusted and still
Right.
make sense and
Right.
still be true to
Right.
the characters. And
Right. We say just all the time. Oh, I'll
Mhm.
be there in just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
normal. Or, you know, it's just over there. Could that person say, oh, it's over there? Yeah.
Yeah.
But is that how that person speaks?
It was just a
Right.
minute. Yeah.
Right. So you have to
Yeah.
keep that in mind too. And then the other thing is, I saw someone say that every chapter has to end with a like a heightened moment right at the end of that chapter.
Sounds
No.
exhausting.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
No, that sounds like a heart attack waiting to happen. Like your anxiety is just amped up every chapter. Like you
Right.
need that the
Put that
comedic
tension.
release or the tension have
Yes.
to ease off somewhere. Yes.
Please put that tension where it goes.
Yeah.
Right? Because like I'm gonna take this one for an example, Dealings in the Dark. If I ended this one on a tense moment for every chapter, the chapters that had tense moments at the ends wouldn't land the way that they're
Right.
supposed to land. And every once in a while, your character needs to be tired and ready to just shut down. And as
Yes.
a reader who cannot stop reading until, page breaks or chapter breaks, don't do
Right.
that to me. Because I'm going to go
Right.
in
The heart attack and then you have to keep going. Yeah. No, it's
like,
there's also like a level there's a plateau of where you hit as anyone of anxiety, panic, any kind of emotion, you hit a plateau and you're just like, I'm so stressed, I can't be stressed about anything anymore. And you're just like apathetic. You don't want to
absolutely.
create that on purpose in your reader by
No.
amping up the tension every chapter. Like
No.
my
And then
anxiety, I would never read a book if every book was like that. I would just
No.
not read. Yeah.
What if your life was just so stressful that day and you couldn't
Right.
You're not going to touch
Exactly.
that. No
Yes.
water.
I'm not gonna read anymore if every book is like
Yeah.
that. Like that'd be my
So,
nightmare.
yeah, that person's reader is looking for constant tension, constant
Right.
escalation. So
Right.
some readers might really enjoy that. And I do understand how leaving it on a little bit of a twist or a little bit of a cliffhanger or a little bit of uh, a punctuation that makes you
Yes.
want to
keep
read the next
going.
chapter. You do want them to be like, oh, I can't wait to see what
Right.
comes next. But when you talk in absolutes,
Yeah.
Mhm.
that is what every person should do. Like that's when you start to not give such
Not
great
Yeah.
advice.
Not every reader is the same. Not every book is the same. Not
Mhm.
every chapter is the same.
Not
And then
every
I get
genre needs that.
And
right.
like also I love those wholesome feel good moments make a book worth reading a lot of times too. Like yes,
Mhm.
I love the action, yes, I love the pacing, yes, I love thrillers, scaring, horror
Yeah.
stories, all that stuff. I love it. But you still need those like feel good moments to fall in love with the characters,
Mhm.
punctuated throughout that. And if you're worried about tension and suspense the whole time, are you going to
Right.
have those feel good moments where we're like, oh my gosh, I love this character so much because of this interaction?
Yeah,
Like,
I
you're going to
absolutely
miss
agree.
out.
Well, and then it's what you were saying that you can't do anything in absolutes with writing advice because when I started my author journey, someone told me I would never be a quote real author
Oh gosh, right.
unless I chose one genre and stayed in it forever,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And I went, I'm never going to be a real author then because I can't.
Right. Well, I mean, even is Stephen King not a real author? Because now he's doing
Right.
mysteries and crime and
Well,
like,
and he
Person
has
you know
his
what I mean?
James
comments.
Patterson.
Oh my God.
Right.
James
Right.
Patterson has a whole shelf, no matter which bookstore or library you
Yeah.
go into. He's got
Yeah, and it's all different genres. Yes.
Yeah. And so I told this person, I was like, I am a real author. I've written
Mm,
books. That makes me
yeah.
a real author. And she
Yeah.
was like, well, you're never going to be a real author because you're never going to find your audience. I will say this. It is harder to find a consistent audience if you're a constant genre flipper. That
Right.
is tricky because you're going to bring some people in, then you're going to lose some people with every book that you
Right.
put out.
Right.
However, if your heart isn't in something and your heart is somewhere else, guess which one's going to make a better story?
Yeah. Yeah.
If I just did horror all the time, I would be bored. And my readers
Yeah.
would be bored because they would know that I was bored,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? So you just can't, in any sense of the word, you cannot deal in absolutes. Write
No.
every single day. Sometimes you're sick. Sometimes you have responsibilities. Sometimes you just need a break, right? Like,
Sometimes you're sad. Yeah. There's so many different reasons. Yeah.
wait, most days, sure, I can get on board with that,
Right.
right? Or
Right.
put out so many words a day. No, I can't do that. I
Right.
have a disability. Like that in and of
Yeah.
itself
Yeah.
means I can't do that.
Sometimes it's the quality of the words that you put out as well, you know?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right.
I
If
mean,
you've
I could
got
knock
5
out
good words, you can write
right.
1,000, but you only have 5 good ones. What was the point?
Absolutely. I could knock out 1,000 words in the next 30 minutes. They are going to be
Right.
absolute hot garbage.
Right. Right.
And it's the same thing as with like your 5 people,
Yeah.
you get your 200, 300, 500 words. Are they the right words?
Right.
Or are they just
Exactly.
500 words?
Mhm.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, just do what feels right. Because if you try to put yourself into a mold, it's never going to work.
All right.
Yes. Well, we've had an absolutely wonderful conversation with you. We do want to give you the chance to let our audience know where they can find out more about you and your book. So share socials, website, all the good stuff.
Yeah. So my website is samanthamoran.net. I tried to keep it kind of simple so you guys can find me online. I have a links page on my website, and I also have a link tree with author Samantha Moran, so you can find everything that you need there. My website will link you to my ebooks, my audiobooks, and my signed physical copies as well. And actually, right now, I am doing signed pre-orders for my next release from my website, which is super fun.
Congratulations. Yeah.
This is the next one. Look at little rabbit,
Yes.
which is the erotic horror one. But yeah, SamanthaMoran.net is absolutely the best place to find me. I am on Facebook. I am on Threads now. I'm sort of leaving Twitter behind. Things have gotten kind of messy over there. That's probably a nice way to put it. I have Instagram and I have TikTok. I think that's it right now, but it's always changing.
Yeah.
And then, I do a lot of things with my readers group on Facebook. They're the Coven of Chaos because my life is chaotic.
Yeah. Yes, love that. And thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, this has been like the best conversation ever. I've loved our talk.
Well, thank you for having me. I was excited.
Yes, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. And thank you to everyone who's listening along at home. Remember, there's more than one way up a mountain, and our next episode will air Friday as usual. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, you can find us on social media at The Tellnut Show or email us at thetellnutshow@gmail.com. Thanks again.
Thanks again for listening. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and liking. We appreciate all the support. Julia J.K. Allen is an author, editor, and coach and can be found at hijingsrudder.com.
Kirsha Fox is an author, avid reader, gamer, and mother to 4, and you can find her at kirshafox.com. Thanks and see you next time.